If you care about Africa's future, pay attention to Burkina Faso. Over the past few years, its leadership has tried to rewrite the country's playbook on security, resources, and regional alliances. The moves are bold, controversial, and if they work, transformational. In this film, we're unpacking the top 10 biggest projects and initiatives launched under Captain Ibrahim Traoré, and why they matter for ordinary people and for global power dynamics. By the end, you'll have a clear picture of what's really changing on the ground in the Sahel, and how those changes could ripple into energy markets, migration, and geopolitics far beyond West Africa. If you're new to AfriPol Lens, this is the episode that brings you inside decisions most headlines only skim. Let's start with the backbone of the economy, gold. Burkina Faso is a gold powerhouse, and gold is the lever the government has chosen to pull first. Under Traore, the state moved to reshape how mining wealth is controlled and shared. New rules increased the state's mandatory stake when it grants or renews a mine, giving the government earlier, bigger participation in future projects. At the same time, authorities have pushed hard against the gray economy that bleeds value from the country, tightening oversight around production, transport, and export routes. Supporters say this is about keeping more of the value chain at home and using it to finance security and public services. Critics worry about investor confidence and the operational strain on a government still fighting an insurgency. The truth is both sides have a point: you cannot fund stability without revenue, and you cannot expand revenue without credible rules and consistent enforcement. The wager here is that firmer state hands on the sector will pay off in better roads, schools, and energy if the state can manage the complexity that comes with it. Linked to that mining reset is a flagship industrial move: building a national gold refinery so Burkina Faso doesn't have to ship raw d'or bars abroad for purification. The logic is simple. If you refine at home, you keep skilled jobs, you capture fees, and you gain a more accurate picture of production. That improves the state's ability to collect taxes and royalties, and it can also help clamp down on smuggling. The refinery plan has been presented with ambitious throughput targets and the promise of formalizing artisanal flows that today leak across borders. It's an industrial bet, and like any industrial bet, it will succeed or fail based on governance details no one sees in a ribbon-cutting photo: procurement quality, environmental safeguards, security at the site, maintenance budgets, and the professionalism of the team that runs it day to day. If those parts lock into place, local refining could reshape Burkina's fiscal capacity. Now to the move that sent shockwaves through West Africa. Burkina Faso, alongside Mali and Niger, quit the ECOWAS bloc and formalized a tighter confederation known as the Alliance of Sahel States. For people in the US, think of it as a shift from a big, region-wide club to a smaller, security-focused pact with neighbors facing similar threats and similar politics. The exit put trade protocols, freedom of movement, and regional projects under renegotiation. In exchange, the three countries get to set their own timetable for political transitions and coordinate defense, customs, and eventually investment plans inside a bloc they control. It's a gamble on sovereignty and speed. It also raises hard questions: how do you keep trade flowing when you walk away from the region's standard rulebook, and how do you persuade investors that your new rules will be stable and predictable? The alliance is already talking about a joint force, new customs arrangements, and even common infrastructure financing. Whether that becomes a durable alternative or a temporary detour is one of the big stories to watch on the continent. Security at home is the other pillar, and it's not just about deploying the army. The government expanded the auxiliary force of local volunteers, integrated them more tightly with regular units, and financed the war effort with special levies and national fundraising mechanisms framed as patriotic contributions. On the ground, that means more eyes, more outposts, and faster reaction in rural zones that had been abandoned. For families displaced by violence, the measure of success is painfully concrete. Can they go back to their farms, reopen schools, and move on roads without fear? There are tough trade-offs here. When you mobilize civilians, you gain local knowledge and deterrence, but you also carry risks around vetting, training, and accountability. Long-term stability requires that today's emergency measures gradually give way to professionalized, well-resourced security institutions that protect everyone equally. You do not stabilize a landlocked country without modern air links, and that is why progress on Ouagadougou's new international airport matters. The new platform northeast of the capital is meant to take pressure off the current airport, open room for cargo growth, and improve safety and connectivity. Air hubs are more than terminals, they anchor logistics parks, cold chain storage, and maintenance facilities that create skilled jobs. If the runways and airfield systems are ready and the terminal follows with reliable power and water, the project can become a magnet for light industry and high-value agriculture. The economic payoff arrives only when airlines add routes and freight forwarders trust the platform. That means predictable security perimeters, ground handling that works, and customs that process goods in hours, not days. Energy is the quiet foundation underneath everything else. Burkina Faso has leaned into solar generation and grid reinforcement with help from development partners and independent power producers. The goal is straightforward: reduce diesel dependence, expand electrification to secondary cities and agro-processing zones, and stabilize a grid hammered by demand growth and sabotage risk. New solar plants and battery storage can shave peak costs and keep critical services going when a line trips. Mini-grids bring power to towns that would otherwise wait years for a main grid connection. For businesses, even a modest cut in outages can be the difference between hiring and layoffs. For households, reliable light after sunset changes school outcomes and public safety. The test is integration. Solar needs smart dispatch, metering that actually collects bills, and maintenance budgets that don't vanish after an inauguration. Roads still move the economy, and a land bridge like Burkina lives or dies by its corridors. That is why the reinforcement of the main international artery at the Ghana border and rehabilitation of priority national routes are such a big deal. When the pavement holds and checkpoints are streamlined, tomatoes reach markets fresh, truckers burn less fuel, and exporters hit delivery windows. Fixing a corridor sounds simple, it is not. You're juggling axle loads, drainage, right-of-way disputes, and the security of crews in zones that remain volatile. That is why multi-year corridor programs matter. They combine asphalt with way stations, police posts, and rest areas so commerce can breathe. The payback is cumulative and visible: more cross-border trucks, steady warehouse construction, and lower prices deep inside the country. Food security has become a strategic priority. You can feel it in the push to expand irrigated plots, distribute inputs, mechanize plowing, and revive processing so value doesn't leak out at harvest time. The cotton chain is a good example. Support for artisanal and small-scale processing helps thousands of families move up from raw fiber toward finished goods, oils, textiles, and byproducts that sell for more. In cereals, the target is to lift yields with better seeds and water management, then guarantee that farmers can sell at fair prices through aggregation centers. None of this is glamorous, but it is nation-building work because it stabilizes rural incomes, lowers food imports, and draws young people back into profitable agriculture rather than pushing them toward risky migration. Industrial cleanup and environmental stewardship are emerging alongside the mining build-out. Gold is messy. Tailings, chemicals, and hazardous byproducts need modern treatment if you want to avoid poisoning water tables and communities. The government has flagged industrial facilities designed to process waste more safely and to professionalize how the sector handles its footprint. This is both an environmental and an economic story. Better treatment cuts the long-term public health bill, reduces conflict between miners and nearby villages, and makes it easier to certify supply chains for export markets that care about traceability. As with the refinery, the difference between a promise and a payoff will be the rigor of implementation and the independence of inspectors. Regional rail and trade logistics are back on the table. For decades, Burkina's exporters and importers have depended on roads to reach ports to the south. Reviving rail links and hardening climate-resilient transport corridors would change the equation, slashing per-ton costs for bulk goods and cutting travel times for everything from fertilizers to consumer goods. That, in turn, encourages factories to locate where land is cheaper and labor markets are hungry. Rail takes time and capital, but even interim steps, dry ports, bonded logistics hubs, and better border facilities deliver immediate gains. When trucks spend less time idling at the frontier and more time moving cargo, the entire economy speeds up. Finally, the fiscal plumbing that keeps all of this alive is being rewired. The state created special contribution mechanisms to fund security, tighten customs, and pushed new local content and revenue-sharing formulas in extractives. The objective is to ring-fence money for the front lines while keeping schools open and clinics stocked. There is a fine line here. Push too hard on levies and you squeeze businesses already dealing with inflation and insecurity. Push too softly and you starve the very projects that could break the cycle. The reform path that works is the one investors and citizens can predict, where rules are published, collections are professional, and audits are real. If you followed this far, you can see the pattern. The government is trying to do three things at once: fight a war, keep the economy running, and renegotiate the country's place in a changing region. Each of the 10 moves we covered fits into that triangle. The resource push tries to finance the war and fund services. The alliance shift tries to unlock security coordination and policy space. The infrastructure builds try to hold the economy together. Big bets invite big risks. But in statecraft, refusing to bet is also a decision with its own costs. Before we close, let's make this conversation two-way. If you live in the Sahel or work there, which of these projects is actually changing daily life where you are? If you're a student of geopolitics in the US, do you think the regional alliance the country has joined can deliver more security than the old bloc did? If you are in business, would local refining and corridor upgrades be enough for you to expand to Burkina Faso, or would you need to see deeper governance reforms first? If you are in agriculture, what one change, irrigation, storage, or pricing would have the biggest impact on your season? And for everyone watching, should the country prioritize short, visible projects that boost morale now, or keep pouring resources into long, slow builds like rail and power that may not pay off for years? Thank you for spending your time with AfriPol Lens. If you value research-driven storytelling from the continent itself, help this channel grow. Subscribe so you never miss our long-form deep dives. Like this video if you found it useful. Drop a comment with your viewpoint or your lived experience. We read every thread and we prioritize stories and perspectives from people on the ground. Share this episode with someone who still thinks West Africa is only a security story and not also a story about industry, infrastructure, and regional realignment. We're here to follow the evidence, to be fair to competing arguments, and to keep the focus on what helps citizens live better. Until next time, stay curious and stay critical.